Welcome, everyone. I know folks are still joining, so gonna give, I know it takes a minute for everyone to pop in from the waiting room, but this is Time to Grow post-grad and gap year programs for neurodivergent students. So that's what you're here for. You've come to the right place. We had a, we looks like we're gonna have a great turnout. We are recording, by the way. We had well over 120 sign up. So see a lot of familiar faces already. This is great. This is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar. So please stay muted if you're not a panelist. We are going to introduce ourselves in a moment. Just waiting for a few more folks to join. And I think I will share my screen so you can all see you're in the right place. So you are here for Time to Grow, post-grad and gap year programs for neurodivergent students. We have a fantastic panel today, whom you will meet in a moment. I'm Eric Endlick. That QR code is for my company, Top College Consultants. There's my contact information right there, Eric at topcollegeconsultants.com. We will be sending out recordings to and a link to the slides. So you don't worry if you don't write everything down or don't capture all the QR codes. That QR code is a link to the slides, but again, it's fine if you don't have your phone handy or you didn't capture everything. But sometimes people like to have the slides and follow along on their own. Uh, Folks, we would love to know where you're joining from, what your role is. Are you a parent of high school freshman, sophomore? Are you a professional tutor, educational consultant, therapist, etc.? And what do you want to learn today from the panelists? So what brought you to this presentation and what would you like to learn? Briefly, we're going to briefly introduce ourselves and jump right into the conversation about gap years and for neurodivergent students. Top College Consultants is a company that I founded to help neurodivergent students around the country apply and transition to college and grad school. We help with all aspects of the process, including the conversation about gap year, finding gap year programs, finding summer programs, finding support in college, um, building the college list, getting essays complete, preparing for interviews, completing applications, maximizing financial aid, the whole process. And these are your esteemed panelists tonight. We've got representatives from Franklin Academy, Curry College, NeuroDev, and CIP. So, and that we've got their contact information there. Again, you'll get the slides, so don't worry about having to, write anything down or can't click on the links anyways. But when you get the slides, you'll be able to click on the links. So let's move right along. Alex, why don't you start us off?
Great. Thanks so much, Eric, for having us. Hi, everyone. Nice to see familiar names. My name is Dr. Alex Morsewood. I'm the head of school at Franklin Academy. And part of our school, we have a postgraduate program called Franklin College Connections. It is a 13th year program geared towards neurodivergent students, linking you from high school to college. Open to about 20 students a year. It allows for students to have experiential learning in real time. Students get to take classes on our campus through our partnership with the University of Connecticut. They get to take classes through our partnership with the Connecticut State System while living independently and working with an academic and student life advisor on how to prepare for their launch to their desired post-secondary school. We like to say we're a true postgraduate experience, very similar to how athletes used to stay back for a year to get ready for prime time and get recruited for D1. We like to think that our students are staying back to practice some more skills, get some more exposure to land to their dream institution where they want to go next. Really excited to be here and looking forward to talking more about it.
Thanks, Alex. Uh, Lauren?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Lauren Bajeski, she, her pronouns. I am at Curry College in the Catalyst program. I'm the Director of Research and Education at Curry College, and excited to be here with you all. Hoping to get some time to chat with more of you, and I know we'll have lots of time for questions, but I wanted to give you a brief overview of the Curry Catalyst program. So the Curry Catalyst is a 1-year post-high school transition program. Students enroll with us and take up to 15 college credits, so 2 courses in the fall and 3 in the spring. The courses in the fall include an executive function and self-advocacy course. So how do you write an email to a professor to request an extension on an assignment? How do you coordinate all of the different pieces of living on college, whether that be attending clubs, and going to your classes and making time for those sorts of things. So building those EF skills and self-advocacy in a course in the first semester alongside a writing course in the fall. And then in the spring, they'll take some elective courses from the course catalog at Curry College. You can see on this slide that our Catalyst program was grounded and based in evidence-based approaches for the best practices of what we understand to support neurodivergent students. So that includes, we have one-to-one coaching and advising. We also take a strengths-based approach to all of the work that we do with our students at Curry. We have peer mentorship where students receive mentorship from current Curry College students. And as I mentioned, strengthening those EF and self-advocacy skills. So students live on our campus. We're located in Milton, Massachusetts, just 7 miles south of Boston, Massachusetts. We have a lovely campus in the woods, so close enough to Boston to get there to have some fun experiences, but a little bit more of a homey space. So we think about this program as a way for our students to dip their toe into the college environment, live on a campus, be fully integrated into the college life while they take courses at that part-time load. And that prepares them for more college after that at Curry or elsewhere, or to go into the employment. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thanks for being here, Lauren. Debbie?
Hey, you hear me? All right. I'm Debbie Gregla, and I'm with NeuroDev. I do admissions, marketing, and also run our parent support. And NeuroDev is a program for neurodivergent young adults, ages 17 to 30-ish, and we support those next steps. And many students that come to our program use NeuroDev as a gap year in the form of a developmental gap year. So helping neurodivergent young adults that need support with becoming more independent and the skills that will help them be successful at college. And we have 2 campuses, one in St. George, Utah, and we have one in Raleigh, North Carolina. And we have different educational offerings at each campus where we can support young adults in taking 1 to 3 college classes to ease into it and learn how to be a college student so they can be successful. And then as they're doing that, then they can add on a little bit more, or a little bit harder, a little bit more challenging. And while they're doing that, they're part of a community where they really belong, and they're doing engaging developmental kinds of experiences like overnight trips and activities. They're participating on our student committee and helping plan things. They're building life skills. They are filling in developmental gaps that might keep them from failing out of college. So thank you for having me on.
Thanks so much. And finally, Kevin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Brockling, Dr. Kevin Brockling, I should say. I am the National Admissions Director at CIP, the College Internship Program. And for 40 years, we have been one of the most comprehensive programs in the world to help neurodivergent young adults succeed in college and employment and independent living skills. What you see on the screen there is what we do for our students at our 5 centers across the country. We take an approach that is holistic. We believe that students need to develop skills in all of these areas in order to be successful in life and to enjoy and be happy and enjoy success in life after college or after high school. So we have centers located. Our main center, our first center is in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. We have a location in Melbourne, Florida, right there on the Space Coast. We have a location in Bloomington, Indiana. We have a location in Berkeley, California, and we have a location in Long Beach, California. And our students attend CIP while they're pursuing higher education or working on a career. Students select one of those 2 tracks. Looking forward to sharing more about CIP and also leading into this gap year discussion with you all.
Great. Thanks so much, Kevin. By the way, when I was trying to click to admit people into the room, that caused the slides to advance, in case you're wondering why the slides went back and forth. We already have a question in the chat. That's great. I look forward to anybody who's joining now. By all means, we would love to hear where you're joining from, what your role is, parent, other type of professional, counselor, tutor, educator, consultant, and what you'd like to learn from our panelists tonight. So let's jump right in. And I would love to hear from all of you, why do you feel it's important for neurodivergent students to consider a PG, post-grad, or gap year?
I'll jump in. I think right now it's, take away just neurodivergent students. I think a lot of students in higher ed are considering to slow down their transition to college. Part of my work, I'm the co-chair of the Disability and Neurodiversity group for the National Association for College Admission Counselors, and we're just seeing more and more students normalize the fact that whether it's because of COVID, whether it's because of changes in the educational system, most students are taking a little bit more time to get ready for the rigors of higher education. I think for neurodivergent students, what I'm seeing on the secondary school lens is students are coming to us definitely with a lot more modifications than previous years. There is increase in social isolation and general readiness around navigating a lot of what we used to call soft skills. So executive functioning, everything from planning to time management, organization, significant reliance on learning management systems to kind of guide day to day, that they have not been able to really function yet without the direct support of an educator. So they've been engaging in education maybe, but they've been might not have been performing independently. And so that leap to higher education, even with the amount and the surplus of support programs that are out there right now, might still be a little too much. So trying it out a little bit in that reduced course load without the scary consequences of meeting like SAP requirements or keeping up with financial aid, policies has been really powerful for a lot of our students. It also provides a great alternative perspective on functioning when a student leaves one environment, tries out a new one before landing at their post-secondary institution of choice.
I think
Thanks, Alex.
I'll add to that, Alex, that I think the path to adulthood has changed in the last 10 to 15 years. I come from higher education. I spent 2 decades in higher education enrollment and in student life. And you saw it pre-COVID that the shift was happening, but COVID turned into a real catalyst for a change in how people are approaching and thinking about higher education. COVID also created greater awareness of mental health needs, supports, and opportunities. And I think this is another thing that's really important that leans into something that Alex said, is that there are more requirements for successful progress through higher education in order to receive financial aid and things like that. Those expectations are tighter. So it's not just about going and getting a college degree, it's going and enjoying success. And sometimes neurotypical and neurodivergent young adults need to have some foundational skill development in order for them to be ready for that next step. And I think that's a compelling reason for a lot of people to have considered stepping back for a minute and saying, okay, am I ready for the next step? And what should that next step actually be?
Thanks, Kevin. Yep, Debbie.
I'll just add to that. So a lot of times too, we have like bright young adults, but when they're neurodivergent, like being successful at college is so much more than just the intellectual academic piece. There's so many other pieces to the pie to be successful at college. And those other pieces are the areas that our neurodivergents often struggle with. And, the social nuance, the time management, living more independently, being able to self-advocate. And a lot of the services in colleges you have to self-access, and that's part of their challenges and disability is that piece of self-accessing. So being able to have a gap year where you can practice more skills and build up to it and let's like create a longer, slower on-ramp where we chunk it down and create wins can be really powerful to build those life skills and identity and confidence and executive functioning, things that our neurodivergents struggle with.
Yeah, I completely agree, Debbie. I think, and just to add on, I think to your point, I think that these transition years provide skill-based practice in context, which I think is really important for so many neurodivergent folks, especially young adults, and thinking about being in a college classroom or a transition environment or on a college campus or spending time in those spaces, I think can make a really big difference just from familiarity perspective, while you're also managing overwhelm and burnout and integrating a lot of new information and developing new relationships, and for some living away from home for the first time. So I think that it can be like you spoke to, Debbie, sort of that slow on ramp into the college space. And we really heard at Curry, we have disability support programs for neurodivergent students going back to PAL, which has been around for 50 years. But we've been hearing a growing need from our families about wanting a post high school transition year offering. So I think that families, have their students enrolling full time into coursework and are noticing, and the students themselves are saying, we would really like an offering where we can start at the part-time load and manage these other factors holistically while we get ready to take on increasingly more academically to manage the mental health pieces that Kevin was speaking to as well.
And if I can just chip in here as well, I'm Cam. I work with Debbie at NeuroDev. I'm our executive director and founding member of the Raleigh location. Happy to be here. Thank you, Eric, for having us as well.
Good
And
to see you,
just
Cam.
yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Just to add, I loved what Kevin said about the path to adulthood looking differently in the last 10, 15 years. And that hasn't been like a really gradual change. That's kind of been like an abrupt sort of shift, at least societally. And so what I think has happened is we always had sort of this trajectory towards our own independence, right? We want our kids to be able to get to their independence, and each generation sort of propagates that independence, meaning we can meet our own needs and we can prepare to take care of those around us as well. And that's the path to adulthood that I think Kevin is talking about. College and universities became such a good tool to get us to that independent level in terms of preparing us for careers that would be able to take care of our financial needs and giving us the skills and the experiences through the college experience to be able to do that. That became the path. And so, as people were talking about, how do we get to be independent? It changed to how do we get our kids to college? Because it became so synonymous with the trajectory towards independence. And for young adults who are not prepared to fully meet the demands of college, or who may not benefit from a predominantly academic type of environment, we think that gap years and postgraduate experiences can help prepare them, because not always is more information the better solution. We think that nobody gets to be more independent by getting older, but we think that they get to be more independent by getting more experience. And so that's what we're offering, I think, collectively as a group here, is a variety of experiences that can help prepare young adults for that independence.
Thanks, Cam. By the way, panelists, I can see all of you on my screen, so if you want to jump in, feel free to raise your actual or virtual hand. So you've all done a great job of outlining some of the what a gap year can do for students, gap year, post-grad year. Um, I'm certainly convinced, and I try to convey that value to students. But I find, I work with high school students that many of them are reluctant to consider a gap year. Many of them right off the bat say, no, not interested. Like they don't even want to learn more about why or what the benefits are. So how do we have engaged that in that conversation with them? What can we say to students and in some cases parents or other professionals to get them to reconsider and open their minds to a postgraduate or gap year?
I'll offer up some thoughts to start. I guess I think we often see that a student's decision is influenced by a lot of different things. What are my friends doing? What do my parents expect of me? And understanding what those motivations are is always the best place to start. What is your motivation to get right into it, and what does that mean? But then I think there also needs to be some discussion about what does it actually mean to go to college. There's still a huge gap between what high school is and what the college experience is. And I think Alex alluded to this as well, that the difference between the two are very significant. So if your student tends to forget appointments on a regular basis or can't get themselves out of bed, in a timely way, then real talk needs to happen. If you can't do this when you're living in your mom and dad's house, what makes you think that you're going to be ready to do that when you move on or live in a college residence hall? And I think for some students the real talk is necessary. For some students, we have to learn how to influence their thinking through other people. So for me, a lot of times we have parents who will say, this is Junior's decision. Junior's going to decide. And that's fine. But if Junior was ready to make decisions on their own, then you probably wouldn't have as much interest in talking to CIP in the first place. So let's talk about some parameters to the conversation. If this, then this. Like if you don't do this, then this might be something that we need to really lean into. Leaving it wide open sometimes can be very overwhelming to students too. So I like to talk to parents. When I talk to parents, it's about how do we set some parameters on what are logical next steps for you, and then talk about what is the reality of those next steps. And I think that's a time conversation. It takes time to have the conversation, so that students can really process and think about those things on a regular basis. But ultimately, intrinsic motivation to do a thing is probably the most important. So you can't say this is what you got to do. It's more, these are some things that you really need to be thinking about. And have you thought about this? Or that doesn't make sense to me. Let's talk about that a little bit more. And then you can start getting a young person to really think about what are the implications of that. And I would say the same with parents. I spent more than 2 decades in higher education, seeing students get started and be super stoked about going to college, and it's going to be great. I'm the first in my family, or I'm the everyone in my family has gone, so I have to go. And then they don't have the executive functioning skills to be able to actually do the work, and then they fail, and that just destroys them. So being able to build up, scaffold a student to get the right supports, to enjoy success early, and just get them to understand that success looks different to different people. And sometimes as Lauren suggested, it's more of a gradual ramp. Some students are ready to go, but finding the right balance for the student that you're talking to, I think that's getting them to that mindset is important.
Thanks, Kevin. Those outcomes you described are some of the very reasons why I and other people I know went into this line of work. I'm a clinical psychologist, and when I worked as a therapist with teens, I saw some of them, have the failure to launch into college, go off to college and come back within the first year. And I felt like there's got to be a better way. And I think gap year programs and post-grad programs can be a key piece of that answer. Other thoughts about what we as professionals or parents can say to students to help them rethink what a gap year or PG year means and what the value is. I know when we talked about this earlier, Alex had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're nailing a bunch of different other conversations. And Kevin, I love that you talked about like the process of it because I think innately young adults, when something's foreign and new, they're going to say no. Like that's like a teenager brain, right? So it's going to take some time. And I think leaving it up to the student's decision in isolation is tricky. But I think now what we're seeing is that students are getting into college. Like college admission is not the problem anymore, like it used to be 10 years ago. They're gonna get into schools, whether it's test optional, the enrollment cliff that we're all talking about. So I think there's really a lot of early components that need to happen. I think there needs to be a bigger conversation around the system related to where the student is coming from. Often I find that when I'm talking to families early on, and we're seeing families start to look for PG programs much earlier than ever before, there needs to be a lot of education about what is happening and what is not happening in secondary school. And I think that's critical. I also really think it's important when we're having that conversation about with the student and family. To the student, what we say is like, you are actually going to college. You're not a high school student. You're not taking high school classes. You are a college student, whether it's at Connecticut State University, whether it is at UConn. We have to talk to the student in the language that they understand, because they're not going to understand that this is part of a 5-year process that is foreign to them. So talking to them in real talk, like Kevin said, by talking through that this is not a regressive step backwards, but this is going to college, will also help us narrate, I think, how we've all talked about PG years. I think it's really important. We're all here to talk through that. The PG gap year is not this inherently deficit-based model that you're not ready. It is actually a call to the system that the system is not actively preparing most students for college readiness at this point. So it's our responsibility to help students normalize like they are college students, they're working towards college, they are in college. And how that looks is similar to so many kids. But you really have to start by exploring what's been going on first in the secondary school so you can educate so many people on the gaps that need to be filled with a lot of our programs. That's not the kid's fault.
Thanks. Lauren, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a few thoughts to add. I really agree with everything that's been said. I think having those honest conversations is a great starting place. I find it useful often with students to ask them some questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How do you want to feel when you're in college? And start to think about working back from there, right? Because there's so many different paths to college and to career these days. And thinking with them about sort of normalizing this path for them and thinking about what are the skills that they need to have to be successful in the long term, 5 years from now, after college or into career, whatever they see themselves in. I also find it helpful to be as concrete as possible. So I was just on a call today with a student who was thinking about our gap year program at Curry. And I usually pull up a visual example schedule of what a day in the life would look like as a Catalyst student. And we look at how different it is from high school. So, you're not in classes from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every day. You're in class for a few times each week. But then there's a lot of free time that's up to you to figure out how you're going to schedule that and make it meaningful for you. So thinking about making it so concrete what the college environment is like, everything from laundry, how do you wake yourself up in the morning? How do you get through something that you really don't want to do? I think those conversations can be helpful to build that self-reflection that Kevin and Alex were talking about, to then bridge students into a conversation about, are we ready for a 4-year sort of full-time load at this moment in time? Or would a stepping stone be actually more supportive and get you where you want to be in 5 years from now? So I like to kind of make it concrete, and visuals often help for me in these conversations, which can be tough, but I think fruitful.
Thanks, Lauren. Go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah. I love what's being said. I want to share. I think it can be helpful too to approach it from, I want to set you up for success at college. And it's a big commitment and it's a lot of stress and pressure. And taking a gap year is an opportunity to practice and build up to it and get skills and have experiences, easing into it and setting yourself up to be successful. And I think for our neurodivergents, they want to hear it from like not a, oh, you don't make the cut, but from a place of, hey, I want to help support you. And this is a big thing. Let's ease into it and help you develop and be ready for it so you can be successful. Because we get a lot of students, young adults that will come to us that have failed out of college 2 and 3 times, and the shame and the like what it does to their identity and their whole self-esteem just can be crushing. And if we can prevent that and help actually set them up to warm up to it, can be really valuable.
I think, Eric, if I could, it kind of begs the question too, is like, what is a gap year, right? I think, from the perspective of the four of us who are sharing our perspectives right now, a gap year is a way to actively do something that prepares you for the next step. A postgraduate year does a similar thing. And I think in my conversations when I was in higher education and also with some parents now, gap year, people think of gap year, it's like, oh, my kid's going to be playing video games in the basement. And I think these are a couple of different things that we're talking about, right? So just to be clear, my perspective of a gap year is how can we productively use that year off of formal classes or education, or if you're in a postgraduate program, that building period productively to prepare you for what that next step is going to be.
Thanks. I have a bunch more questions, but I also really want to get to the questions in the chat that are piling up. One of them is from Julie, who asked, do you recommend students apply and defer college admission in order to help alleviate anxiety about not going immediately post high school with their peers? I'll just say I generally encourage students to apply while they're still in high school. It tends to be easier. They have access to their teacher and their counselor. They can just walk down the hall to have a conversation if they need something, whether it's a transcript or recommendation. And the memory, if a teacher's writing a recommendation, the memories of the student are just fresher in their minds. Lots of advantages to applying while students are still in high school. There are some situations where a student is going to do something during the gap year that will make them a stronger applicant to college. So in that case, it does make sense for them to wait. But in many cases, it just keeps the options open. But there's some other questions sort of related to that. One is from Sarah, who asked, if a student enrolls in your academy, can they still apply as a freshman to college? We've been told as soon as our son starts taking college credits, they will need to apply as a transfer to a 4-year college. I'll just say a couple of quick things about that. One is those policies vary from college to college as to how they define transfer students. And two, some programs have arrangements to ensure that students won't be seen as transfer students. But by all means, any of you on the panel who could weigh in.
So we're doing this right now as we're registering students for courses this fall. So a couple things. I agree, Eric. Like apply to college while you're in high school because no matter what, that is really helpful information when you want to open that Common App a year later and edit it as you see fit. Getting those recommendations, getting the transcripts, all that busy work is really helpful. There's a couple of key things to consider when you're looking at either deferring or if you're entering as a first-time full-time freshman. And I think a lot of us are doing this very intentionally. You are not a full-time college student that's matriculated at that university, typically in a lot of our programs. So keeping that credit count under 12 or even under 9 sometimes is really helpful. Most colleges are fine with taking gap years and PG years as long as you're not a fully matriculated student at another university. So that is like that key thing. But Eric is right. You have to look at every college. And typically, you have to pick up the phone and call. As a PG program, if you defer, for example, there are some colleges that will not accept deferment because you are typically seen as a high school student and not a college student. Even if you're taking college classes, that it doesn't matter. So every college has like these weird rules, but universally, as long as you're not a matriculated full-time student at another institution, you typically don't have a hard time still applying as a full-time first-time freshman, because you just be taking anywhere from 6 to 9 credits, and even 15 over the year is considered full-time for a semester.
And if you've gotten into college as a high school senior and you know you're taking a gap year, you can have that conversation with the college you're committing to and get that all worked out.
Yeah, again, just if you're for, I know for as we're the only one associated with a high school, it's just really important for what we're telling colleges is that they are taking college courses. They're just not matriculated, and we're just supporting that. If they think that you're still doing another year in high school, that might shift. But typically, if they're accepting you 1 year, they're likely gonna accept you again. But you just want to be really clear with everybody, and pick up the phone and talk to that admissions counselor because websites change, rules are changing, and admission criteria are changing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the transfer question? There's plenty more questions if you don't feel compelled. Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, just a quick thought to echo what Alex said. I think that's what I've seen to be true as well. And I would recommend, yeah, contacting colleges directly. Very much agree with that. And to underscore what he said, that I think many of our programs offer courses at the part-time load. So for example, in Grade Catalyst, it's 15 credits which is typically what students take in one semester, but for Catalyst, it's over the course of a whole year. I think that's similar for Franklin's Connections program as well, up to 15. So I think that we've been really mindful in designing those, but I agree that the attention is needed to kind of just see where you're hoping to go and have those conversations up front can be useful. Yeah.
I was just going to type this, but really quickly, a lot of us do work with community colleges, which also give you access and priority admission to their state university system, as most state systems are swallowing that community college model. So in Connecticut, for example, we have the Connecticut state system's an affiliated agreement, similar to like the California system. So I'm sure you see that a lot at CIP too, Kevin, where if you do really well in the community college, it gives you easier access to the state system.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to offer that up that, really, if depending on where you're coming from and where you plan to go, if you're starting at a community or technical college, most of the time there's an easy transfer opportunity to the state school in the area. If you're more focused on a private experience, one of the great things about higher education is that each college and university can create their own curriculum. One of the terrible things about higher education is that each college and university can decide if they want to accept your credit in their curriculum. So it's just really important to plan ahead, to really just be proactive as possible in that scenario.
I know that some of you and other programs offer summer college readiness programs, and Julie asked, are there summer programs that can provide the same skill sets instead of a whole year? So it's an interesting question because the summer college readiness programs exist, but I'm sure panelists would have something to say about, getting the same skills over the course of a summer versus a whole year. And summer usually means 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, I'll offer up CIP. We have a 2-week summer program at all 5 of our centers that is hosted at one of our partner colleges and universities. And the purpose of it is to give our students the opportunity to, one, practice independence, being away from mom and dad for 2 weeks, fully supervised, but to get away. But to do that on a college or university campus so that they can start experiencing what is it like to be in this environment and how is it different, and am I ready to live this level of independence, or where do I need to grow? So our Summer at CIP program is really designed to kind of give students an introduction to what is college going to look like in 2 weeks. So it's very, very brief, but meant to provide that experience.
Yeah, I wanted to add earlier that I think it depends on what you and your student would feel is most appropriate. Often what the students are in need of out of a gap year program cannot be accomplished in just a couple of weeks because what they need is a developmental experience. And so we're looking at not just skill acquisition or a crash course on how to get information. Maybe that would be helpful for the right students. But for many of our neurodivergent students, what we're seeing is that they need an opportunity to develop the types of intentionality, executive function, identity, self accountability, and other skills that would help them to navigate the college experience. And so development can go as quickly as human learning can go. And what we're doing is having a neurological experience through the experiences that we're navigating in our developmental gap year of actually the brain actually just changing. And that does take some time.
I also think everybody should know like most college readiness summer programs are recruitment tactics. So you are being assessed by the landscape in which the student is a student at, not in this like global perspective of college readiness. It is typically looking at how the student is functioning in the environment that they're in. And that's really important if you have like a neurodivergent specific summer program because you're not looking at a student in the context of that global baseline requirements where accommodations and modifications are provided. If there's not credit given, if there is not college policy that is done, that if you're not going through those processes, it typically is just exposure to that specific university. And what we all know is that, the 3,000 plus colleges are very different in how they navigate the student experience. So it's important to recognize how the student is being assessed and what readiness they're being actually exposed to. Easy for me to say that now that I'm on the secondary school and not running a summer program anymore.
Thanks. So I know that, well, doesn't Franklin has a summer
We do, but we're
program
not
too,
like
but
our
yeah.
college readiness is a college application boot camp. We're trying to support students over 4 weeks to finish their college application. We're not mimicking college on our high school campus.
Yeah,
But we
right.
do have a high school program if anybody's interested.
So one of the things I encounter with parents is concerns about the cost of support programs, concern about the cost of college, to be sure, then the cost of a support program at college on top of that. And then if we talk about, hey, why don't you do a year at NeuroDev or a year at CIP or another program prior to college? That can be daunting to parents. So curious, anything any of you want to share about funding programs? And this ties into a question that Amy asked about whether 529 plan funding can be used. And if you don't want to jump in on things like 529, that's okay. The rules change, so hard to stay abreast of that. Anything families should know
Yeah,
about funding programs? Go ahead. Was that you,
I
Debbie?
can jump in.
Yeah.
It is daunting. The costs are really high. And the costs are high when you don't have good support. I'd say they're even higher in some ways. But there have been changes, and I'm not like a legal person to tell you, but the 529, they've made changes to where you can convert your 529 funds to a 529A or a 529 ABLE account, and then you can use those funds for anything that supports things that support their diagnoses. So if you have an autistic or, if they have a psych eval that shows their diagnoses, then you can convert those funds to fund support. So that's one option. And we know some families will use both the 529 and the 529A. So they'll move some of the funds over to 529A to help pay for things. And if you've got a kid in high school that needs a lot more, if they're going to need transition support, also you can get an attorney and go to the school district, and the school districts by law are required to make sure your kid is ready for leaving high school. So there may be some avenues that way. We've had young adults come to our program that their school district paid for transition support. So there's a couple
Are those
options.
students who had not yet accepted a diploma?
Correct. They were still in the high school. And
Yeah.
some of them are on like the 5-year high school plan, right? And the school is not, when you can show that they aren't providing for that student to be ready to transition out of high school, you can put pressure on the school district to pay for programs that will support that transition.
Yeah, I think that's something parents don't always know. Other thoughts about paying for programs? Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah, I'll offer up that we do have some of our families, typically up in the Northeast, it tends to be more likely to happen where they're receiving school district funding and support from their school district. We do have students who receive support from Voc Rehab or DCFS or something similar to that as well. Again, that's kind of regional. Different states have different approaches to doing these things. 529 plans and ABLE plans are something that some of our families are using them as well. It just kind of depends. Again, each state and the person that you talk to is going to have a different opinion about that. So often it's a conversation that needs to happen. It's not a this is what I'm doing. It's more of a this is what this program is and this is how it works as it relates to kind of what we do in the transition field. And then in some cases, like over in California, there's really great supports for residents of California through the regional center there, where at CIP, the regional center covers the cost of tuition, which is pretty significant and significantly reduces the cost the family has out of pocket. We still have families who have to cover the cost of housing, and there's a stipend that we ask our families to provide our students so that we can practice budgeting with them. But regional center and self-determination, which is kind of expanding across the country as well, becomes a really great opportunity for families to get support in this area.
I'm so glad you pointed that out. So we've identified sort of three types of funding. One is from the family through a 529 or other savings from the school district and from other agencies like Folk Rehab or in California, the regional centers. And I often encourage families to explore public benefits. I think they're not always learning in the high schools what public benefits their child may be eligible for. Or sometimes families assume, oh, because of our, financial situation or because of our child's level of capabilities, we assume our child wouldn't be eligible for certain benefits. It doesn't cost you anything to apply and to explore whether they could get on Voc Rehab or any number of SSI, any number of other public benefits, which could be a game changer.
Yeah.
Kevin, Amy just asked, is CIP tuition usually only covered by self-determination funding, specifically in California?
No, I mean, we have families who are private pay families. We have regional center funding, and then we have self-determined funding that comes through over there too. We do have some families who use their 529s in California as well. Don't see a lot of school district funding because really the regional center is kind of the main funding source that occurs there. So that's been our experience in California so far.
Anything else about funding before we move on to other topics? So many great questions.
Yeah, just at Franklin and a lot of like postgraduate programs, talk to admissions, we offer needed merit-based financial aid and scholarship. So not going through public funds, but going through institutional aid is definitely available. Also, really, as you all said, like do your homework. A lot of these are layered costs that are often hidden. And the same thing goes for a lot of these support programs in colleges. When you go to your net price calculator on college websites, typically the cost of some of these programs are hidden. What I like about a lot of programs that they're doing now is being more upfront about what tuition really costs. So just make sure you're really asking, what is the full cost of attendance and not just the cost for tuition?
Yeah, well, that kind of feeds into another question, and that's something that's absolutely important for families to be aware of. At Top College Consultants, we've created a database of neurodiversity supportive colleges, neurodiversity friendly colleges. And in those support programs, as you pointed out, Alex, there's often a cost associated that parents don't always realize there's an additional cost. And I put that information into the database so you can see if we were to go to this college and get into this support program, what would that look like financially? So on that topic of support in college, Julie asked, how is your program similar and different from specified programs at colleges, such as Emory Oaks in Atlanta, uh, it's, which of course is in our database. And clearly one difference is that those support programs are for students who've started college, so they need to be at a certain point to be enrolled in college. But I'm sure you folks have other thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's going
Looks
to be
like
a little.
Lauren was gonna.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks. No, just going to offer a perspective from the college setting at Curry. So I think similar to Emory Oaks, there is a proliferation we're seeing of like autism support programs on college campuses and other social emotional support programs for full-time students. And so I think that it's important to look at the differences between those programs for full-time students and also for the transition year, which we're talking about here. And so I think that that's one piece. I think it matters a lot to look at for transition programs. Are you getting course credit? So there's some other programs that I know of where students don't get college credit for the courses that they're taking, but they may still be program-based courses. So that's a detail area to look at. And to dive a little bit more into what are the offerings holistically outside of classes. So I think those are big pieces to look at when you're looking at the differences between programs that are offered at colleges. Is there course credit there? Is there some type of personalized learning plan happening or some sort of individualized goal setting, person-centered learning approach, which we know is best practice, especially for this age group and for neurodivergent students? I think those would be some things to look at as well in thinking about students and what the right choice is for them. So just some thoughts there.
Thanks, Lauren. I think, Kevin, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think it's important to be honest with yourself and the support that your student needs. I think that's probably the most important thing. So you get a tool in high school, the IEP or a 504 or whatever that might be. And if you look at that and you compare it to the supports that are being offered, you can have an honest assessment about whether or not you're going to get the supports that they need. I think there's a kind of a desire oftentimes with parents. I want my child, kind of what Cam was expressing earlier, like I want my child to go to college. That's the next step. And there's often a skip. Well, there's this program that's meant to support them. That's great. Let's go. And there's not an actual assessment of, does that program offer the right supports that my student needs? If they do, that's great. Go for it. If they don't have that level of support, then it might be worth looking further, right? I'm not going to say that CIP is the solution for everything here, but we see that often when students fail to launch. We have students coming in from a college program. It's because they didn't have the support that they needed. They were at a program meant to support them, but they didn't have as much support, for example, in the social skills development area. And that's where the student became isolated and didn't really get the full experience. And that's, coming from a student life perspective in higher education, going to college isn't just about the degree, it's about the journey that happens along the way. So that social skill development, the soft skill development, that's all an important part of what the benefit of a college experience is, and that needs to be supported in all of the students who are going into any program, CIP or any other program.
I also think most of our programs, and I'm sorry, my cat's trying to join our Zoom meeting right now. Most of our programs have a very clear start and end goal, right? We are working, that's my cat. We are working towards getting our students ready for the next step, whatever that is. A lot of these fee-based programs at many institutions that are opening up pretty regularly are kind of a one and done. You're doing your freshman year and you're moving on. There's not a clear bridge from the tapered support that you get as a freshman and what happens when you're a sophomore. So I think part of what we're really looking at is the intentional and scaffolded introduction to the intensity and rigors of higher education, when most fee-based programs are really looking at first year retention as a key indicator of success and not years 2, 3, 4, and unfortunately 5 and 6 that are associated with higher education.
Another thing that strikes me is that many of your program students can take a college course or to get some college credits during the program. So it isn't this, you know, absolute break between college and gap year. There's some transition there. Whereas if you were to go straight to a college with a support program like the one Julie mentioned, typically you have to be a full-time student. Some colleges will allow an accommodation of reduced course load. That is a disability accommodation that exists, but it's not a given that you're going to get that accommodation. So there's a big difference between taking one or two courses in the gap year or PG year, getting used to how things work at college, and then going on to being a full-time student, as opposed to just starting as a full-time student in college, possibly with a support program.
Yeah, and I would be careful to not misunderstand the difference between support and accommodations. Accommodations is about what the college will allow. It's like allowances for how you might take tests or what resources you may be allowed to receive. Whereas support is more of an active, intentional companionship or utilization of resources, not passive.
And accommodations are always free, whereas support frequently has a cost associated with it in on the college campus. Not so much in K through 12, which is what families are often used to. Um, we only have a few minutes left. I would love to hear any cool stories any of you can share about students you've worked with, interesting things they did during a gap or PG year, or amazing outcomes that they had.
I would love to share a story, but I feel like I always start, so I want to hold off.
Anybody else want to
I mean, I just
jump
saw
in?
one of my alums at an event with Lauren the other day who is finishing his first year at college after a year with us. He was in another high school for 4 years, came to us for a PG year, finished his first year with a 3.8 GPA and is kicking butt and is happy. And I think like when I visit colleges right now, I think there's nothing, I know that sounds corny. There's nothing better than a student like reporting their happiness, but also reporting what's like working and not working. And he was honest and direct and was able to talk about his successes, able to talk about his setbacks, just like every other college student. And to me, when he came to us, he never wrote a 5 paragraph essay. He lived with, his family was his coach, tutor, counselor, best friend. So for him to be in this place a year later, is like music to an educator's ear. So very proud of him and amongst our FCC graduates.
Debbie, can you unmute?
You. We recently had dinner with one of our students that graduated with his bachelor's degree and is working at a great tech job actually. And it's so fun because when he came to us, his plan, and he had told his parents, his plan was to purchase a mobile home and go live in Walmart parking lots as he did some kind of business that he, this scenario that his parents were just dying over. And when he came to NeuroDev and started building, like, had a lot of rigidity, super high IQ, and some real talents, but the social piece and his reality of what adulting really looks like was very off. And to see him make that progress and build relationships, he's got a girlfriend, he's having that life and his perspective shift. He wasn't going to do college, but when he came to our program, he started taking classes and realized he could do it, and just to see where he's at. And that's what we're kind of dealing with some of these, some of our neurodivergence is like their perception of things and what they want. Just to see them actually make progress and build skills that they need to be adults and be successful and be happy it's really fun to watch.
Go ahead, Kevin. You're dying to jump in.
Yeah, I love when I was in higher ed, orientation and graduation were the best things. And then when you get to hear from alumni, it was just affirmation that you needed to keep doing the work, right? So we have a student at our Berkeley Center, who finished with us last May. He's a student who came to us at CIP Berkeley in his first year, just doing the gap year thing, kind of building up his skill set, the foundation that he needed to be successful in school, finished a 4-year degree. I got to go with him to Belize in our global engagement experience and got to know him a little bit better then. And he's just a fantastic human being and individual. And now he's working full-time in the IT area, which is what he wanted to do, living a life of independence. So he was with us for a number of years, 4 years, I think. But ultimately, to see him happy, successful, and eager to give back, to be able to share his story and to share the journey that he was on, that's what it's all about. That's why we do what we do, to help our human beings be happy. So.
Thank you. Love these stories. We're just about the end of time. Any other lightning quick stories any of you want to share before we wrap up? Yeah, Lauren?
Just to say, so Curry Catalyst has its first incoming class this fall, 2026. But I will say, just in general, on a sort of zoomed out level, every student that I see coming into Curry, whether it's in our SAIL program or PAL or just in general sort of student body who goes to a transition year program or post high school program, I think comes in with a little more confidence, and that's been exciting to see. And so will just say in general that I have seen some great success for students who have a little bit more self-awareness and know who they are and what they want to get out of college.
Great. Well, thanks so much to our panelists. This was so informative. Thanks to all of you who joined us. I love the questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but I will be sending out contact information if you want to reach out to anyone for any follow-up. So it's great to see all of you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you all.